we're traveling through a dimension both of sound and ideas. We're at a place where live gathering has amplified a solar radio, a wireless transmitter. Astonishing, perhaps.
Radio Shack was started in 1921 by two brothers, Theodore and Milton Dushman, who were wanting to provide equipment for the new field of amateur radio, also known as ham radio. The two brothers opened a one-store retail and mail order operation in the heart of downtown Boston at 46 Brattle Street, choosing the name Radio Shack, which was the term for a wooden structure that housed a ship's radio equipment. The first Radio Shack catalog appeared in 1939 as the company entered the high-fidelity music market. In 1954, Radio Shack began selling its own private label products under the brand name Realist, changing the brand name to Realistic after being sued by a brand with a similar name, Stereo Realist. In 1959, the store moved its headquarters to 730 Commonwealth Avenue in Boston with ambitious plans for further expansion. After expanding to 9 stores plus an extensive mail order business, the company fell on hard times in the 1960s. Tandy Corporation, which at the time were known for leather goods, were looking for other hobbyist-related businesses into which it could expand. CEO Charles Tandy saw the potential in Radio Shack and retail consumer electronics and purchased the company in 1962 for $300,000. Tandy's strategy was to appeal to hobbyists. They developed small stores that were staffed by people who knew electronics and sold mainly private brands.
Picked up your new Radio Shack catalog yet? It's free at your nearby Radio Shack.
Some of Tandy's first changes was to close Radio Shack's unprofitable mail order business, end credit purchases, and reduced many top management positions, keeping the salespeople, merchandisers, and advertisers.
And our famous line of realistic CB radios. Get your free copy today.
Private label brands from lower-cost manufacturers replaced name brands to raise Radio Shack's profit margins. Non-electronic lines from go-karts to musical instruments were discontinued under the new business plan. Customer data from the former Radio Shack mail order business determined where Tandy would locate new stores. In markets too small to support a company-owned Radio Shack store, the chain relied on independent dealers who carried their products as a sideline. Charles Tandy said, "We're not looking for the guy who wants to spend his entire paycheck on a sound system. Instead, seeking customers looking to save money by buying cheaper goods and improving them through modifications and accessorizing." Charles Tandy, who had guided the firm through a period of growth and redirection in the 1960s and 1970s, died of a heart attack at age 60 in November of 1978. Radio Shack continued to grow through the 1980s, with much of the Radio Shack line being manufactured in the company's own factories to keep prices low. By 1991, the Tandy Company was the world's biggest manufacturer of personal computers, At one point, they were even the world's largest electronics chain. In June of 1991, Tandy closed or restructured its 200 Radio Shack computer centers and attempted to shift its emphasis away from components and cables toward mainstream consumer electronics. House brand products were replaced with third-party brands already available from competitors. This move greatly reduced profit margins. In 1992, Tandy attempted to launch big box electronics retailer Incredible Universe, but most of the 17 stores never turned a profit and were closed by 1997. The stores that were profitable were sold and converted to Fry's Electronics. Fry's closed its last store in 2021.
When it's out of whack and out of warranty, what do? Now there's an answer. Introducing the Repair Shop at Radio
In 1994, the company introduced a service known as the Repair Shop at Radio Shack. The service provided inexpensive out-of-warranty repairs for more than 45 different brands of electronic equipment.
Even the more stubborn.
Lynn Roberts, president of the Radio Shack division since 1993, estimated that the new repair business could possibly generate $500 million per year by 1999.
The Repair Shop at Radio Shack.
The phrase America's Technology Store was abandoned for the "You've got questions, we've got answers" slogan in 1994. Continuing into 1994, Radio Shack began selling IBM home computers. This partnership would last until 1998, when Radio Shack partnered with Compaq and created the Creative Learning Center as a store within a store to promote desktop PCs. Tandy tried similar promotions with the Sprint store at Radio Shack that dealt in mobile telephones, RCA Digital Entertainment Center, which specialized in home audio and video products, and Power Zone, Radio Shack's line of battery products, power supplies, and surge protectors. In May of 2000, the company dropped the Tandy name altogether, becoming simply Radio Shack Corporation.
QCAP from Radio Shack. Now you can access web pages even easier and faster than before.
In mid-2000, Radio Shack was one of multiple backers in the QCAT barcode reader, which turned out to be a marketing failure. The company had invested $35 million in the concept, including printing barcodes throughout its catalogs and giving QCAT devices to customers at no charge. The last annual Radio Shack printed catalogs were distributed to the public in 2003. In 2004, Radio Shack was the target of a class action lawsuit in which more than 3,300 current or former Radio Shack managers alleged the company required them to work long hours without overtime pay. Radio Shack launched a successful strategic lawsuit against public participation, or SLAP suit, against Bradley D. Jones, the webmaster of RadioShackSucks.com, and a former Radio Shack dealer for 17 years. In April of 2004, AutoZone brought suit against Radio Shack for using the name Power Zone to promote a section of its retail stores, citing trademark infringement. That lawsuit was dropped in June the same year due to lack of evidence. In 2005, Radio Shack parted with Verizon and began a 10-year agreement with Singular, which later became AT&T, and renegotiated its 11-year agreement with Sprint. That same year, under the leadership of Jim Hamilton, Radio Shack sold more mobile phones than Walmart, Circuit City, and Best Buy combined. Support for many of Radio Shack's traditional product lines, including amateur radio, ended by 2006. In the spring of 2006, Radio Shack announced a strategy to increase average unit volume, lower overhead cost, and grow profitable square footage. That year, Radio Shack closed nearly 500 locations. It was determined that some stores were located too close to each other, causing them to compete with one another for the same customers. In August of 2009, Radio Shack rebranded itself as The Shack. The campaign increased sales of mobile products, but at the expense of its core components.
How do you feel about Radio Shack changing its name to The Shack?
I think that would probably be better. Yeah,
Are you going to call it that?
probably not. No.
In September of 2012, Radio Shack's main office laid off 130 workers after reporting a $21 million quarterly loss. Radio Shack's headquarters employment dropped from more than 2,000 before the 2006 layoffs to slightly fewer than 1,000 in late 2013. Longtime staff observed a slow and gradual shift away from electronic parts and customer service and toward promotion of wireless sales and add-ons. On March 4, 2014, the company proposed a restructuring plan which would close more than 1,000 lower-performing stores, almost 20% of its U.S. locations. On May 9, 2014, the company reported that creditors had prevented the plan from being carried out, presuming fewer stores would mean fewer assets to secure the loan and reduce any recovery it would get in a bankruptcy reorganization.
Radio Shack?
At the end of October 2014, quarterly figures indicated Radio Shack was losing about $1.1 million per day.
What?
The 80s called. They want their store back.
The company had many problems maintaining inventory of big-ticket items. One of those, Apple's iPhone 6, frequently being out of stock, further cut into already declining sales. On February 2, 2015, the company was delisted from the New York Stock Exchange after its average market capitalization remained below $50 million for longer than 30 consecutive days. That same day, Bloomberg News reported that Radio Shack was in talks to sell half of its stores to Sprint and close the rest, which would effectively render Radio Shack no longer a standalone retailer. Amazon.com was also mentioned to be one of the potential bidders. On February 3rd, Radio Shack defaulted on its loan from Salus Capital. Many stores had already closed abruptly on Sunday, February 1st, 2015, the first day of the company's fiscal year, with employees only given notice just a few hours in advance. Other stores opened with very few employees, low inventory, and reduced hours, only because the Salus Capital loan terms limited store closures to 200 a year. On February 5, 2015, Radio Shack announced that it had filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection. On March 31, 2015, the bankruptcy court approved a $160 million offer by the Standard General affiliate, General Wireless, gaining ownership of 1,743 Radio Shack locations. The acquisition would not include rights to Radio Shack's intellectual property such as its trademarks, rights to Radio Shack's franchise locations, and customer records, which were to be sold separately.
How much is your personal information worth? Well, a lot.
If you ever shopped at Radio Shack, your information may be sold to the highest bidder.
Radio Shack was criticized for including the personal data of 67 million of its customers as part of its assets for sale during the proceedings, despite its long-standing policy and promise to customers that data would never be sold for any reason at any time. Standard General acquired the Radio Shack brand after Radio Shack Corporation filed for bankruptcy in 2015. It formed the affiliate General Wireless Operations to act as the new parent company for the brand. This new Radio Shack focused on its partnership with Sprint in the hopes of carrying on the brand. Rebranded stores soft-launched on April 10, 2015. In May of 2015, the acquisition of the Radio Shack name and its assets by General Wireless for $26.2 million was finalized. Chief Marketing Officer Michael Tattleman emphasized that the company that emerged from the 2015 proceedings is an entirely new company, and went on to affirm that the old Radio Shack did not re-emerge from bankruptcy, calling it defunct. In early of 2015, it was largely speculated that General Wireless was preparing to take Radio Shack through its second bankruptcy in 2 years. Radio Shack's second Chapter 11 bankruptcy was formally filed on March 8, 2017. Of the 1,300 remaining stores, several hundred were converted into Sprint-only locations. The company then engaged in the liquidation of all inventory, supplies, and store fixtures, as well as auctioning off old memorabilia. On May 26, Radio Shack announced plans to close all but 70 corporate stores and shift its business primarily to online. These stores closed after Memorial Day weekend of 2017. General Wireless announced plans on June 12, 2017 to auction off the Radio Shack name and IP, with bidding to begin on July 18th. Bidding concluded on July 19, 2017, when one of Radio Shack's creditors, Kensington Capital Holdings, obtained the Radio Shack brand and other intellectual properties for $15 million. Kensington was the sole bidder. October 2017, General Wireless officially exited bankruptcy and was allowed to retain the company's warehouse, e-commerce site, dealer network operations, and up to 28 stores. In late July 2018, Radio Shack partnered up with Hobbytown USA, a retail hobby collectibles and toy chain, to open up around 100 Radio Shack Express stores. In November of 2020, Radio Shack's intellectual property, its remaining operations, about 400 independent authorized dealers, and its online sales operations were purchased by Retail E-Commerce Ventures, a Florida-based company that had previously purchased defunct retailers Pier 1 Imports, Dress Barn, and Linens and Things, along with the Franklin Mint. The Twitter account for Radio Shack gained notoriety in June of 2022 when it began posting tweets with not safe for work content in an effort to attract attention towards its cryptocurrency platform, then renamed Radio Shack Swap. The strategy resulted in Hobbytown USA terminating their relationship with Radio Shack in response to customer confusion surrounding the posts. Radio Shack lives on today through Unicommerce Group, who purchased the company from Retail E-Commerce Ventures in May of 2023. Unicommerce has announced plans to reboot the Radio Shack website by early 2024, offering 500 new products for sale. And that'll do it for this episode of Through the Desolate. Leave a comment below of any memories you might have of Radio Shack, and don't forget to give us a like on the video and hit that subscribe button to keep up with the channel.